Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack some incredibly fascinating concepts from Chapter 6 of Dr. Erndilder Janssen's textbook, Ethics and Behavioral Economics. We are going to look right under the hood to figure out the psychological and really the ethical machinery behind the choices we make every single day. It's just a fantastic area of study because it bridges hard academic economic theory with the very real, very human question of how we are being influenced in our daily lives. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start with a question I think we can all relate to. We've all been there, right? You click exactly once to start a shiny new free trial, but when you actually want to leave, suddenly you have to navigate this crazy maze of menus, retention offers, and confirmation screens. Well, that's not an accident. It is a highly deliberate design choice that exploits our natural human inertia. So today, we're going to see exactly how choice architecture can basically be weaponized against us, and more importantly, we'll learn how to spot the difference between a genuinely helpful nudge and manipulative control.
To really understand this, we first have to look at this intentionally provocative phrase coined by behavioral economists Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. They call it libertarian paternalism. Now, usually, paternalism means restricting someone's choices for their own good, right? Which obviously violates their autonomy. And libertarianism means freedom of choice is the absolute paramount thing. So putting those two words together, it's kind of an oxymoron. It claims to resolve this massive contradiction by suggesting we can actually guide behavior ethically and effectively without coercing anyone or taking away any of their options.
All right, here is our cognitive roadmap for today. We'll start with the paradox, run through 4 ethical objections, look at the 2-axis framework, check out the evaluative toolkit, and finish up with some real-world applications.
Okay, part 1, the paradox. Let's dive into the central friction here. The big question is, can we truly steer people's choices without violating their individual autonomy? Thaler and Sunstein argue that we absolutely can. But, that claim really requires a rigorous stress test. Think about it. If our choices are actively being shaped by an architect who controls the environment, whether that's a government designing a tax form or a streaming service tweaking a checkout page, are we genuinely making a free choice?
Which brings us to Section 2, 4 ethical objections. Let's put this theory through the academic gauntlet.
First up, we have the autonomy objection, brought forward by Hausman and Welch. They basically argue that nudges disrespect our autonomy because they completely bypass our rational faculties. They work on System 1, that fast, automatic, unconscious part of our brain, rather than engaging System 2, our slow, deliberative brain. Take a default pension enrollment that relies on inertia. If you end up saving for retirement just because you were auto-enrolled, you haven't actually decided to save. You've merely failed to decide not to. And that raises some pretty serious autonomy concerns. Now, Thaler and Sunstein defend this by saying, well, all choice architectures work this way. There's literally no such thing as a neutral design, but the objection remains incredibly powerful. Moving to the second objection, the welfare standard problem, highlighted by Lowenstein and Hazley. Thaler and Sunstein say nudges help people make choices they would make if they were fully rational. But Lowenstein and Hazley point out a pretty massive flaw here. Ideally, rational preferences are completely unobservable. We can't see them. If a nudge shifts your focus away from the present to help you save for the future, is it favoring your long-run self over your short-run self? Actually, scratch that. The real question is, whose preferences are we actually optimizing for? This ambiguity gives choice architects dangerous discretion to just impose their own values or political goals, all under the guise of correcting cognitive bias. All right, on this slide, we pit 2 opposing views on manipulation against each other. It's sort of a philosophical heavyweight bout. On the left, you have Marques de Silva's bypass criterion. She argues that an influence attempt is fundamentally manipulative if it achieves its effect by bypassing the target's rational evaluation of the reasons. Just straight up manipulative. On the right, Sunstein counters that this sets a totally impossible standard, arguing that all communication involves some non-deliberative elements. For Sunstein, as long as a nudge provides accurate info and respects your ability to opt out, you're good. It's ethically acceptable. So we really have to weigh this. Does inherently bypassing rational thought make something manipulative, or does the sheer ability to click opt out provide enough ethical cover?
And the final objection is the slippery slope, raised by Rebinato. If we accept that governments and institutions can manipulate choice architecture to correct our biases, what stops a gradual slide towards stronger, outright coercive interventions? Like, if a gentle nudge fails, does the government just ban the behavior entirely?
We have to ask if the libertarian constraint, that promise to never actually take an option off the table, provides a true principled stopping point, or if it's really just a political boundary that's going to shift over time.
Section 3. The two-axis framework. This is where things get really clear.
Having survived the gauntlet of objections, we arrive at this two-axis framework, and it brilliantly resolves a lot of this ethical tension. The horizontal axis maps cognitive mechanisms, from our automatic System 1 on the left to our deliberative, rational System 2 on the right. But the absolutely crucial part is the vertical axis. Who actually benefits? Is it the designer at the top or the user at the bottom? Notice that both welfare nudges and dark patterns rely on the exact same non-deliberative mechanisms. The vital difference, the thing that separates a helpful nudge from a dark pattern, is simply whether it benefits you, the user, or them, the designer.
Building on that last point, we can observe this continuum. Notice how, as transparency falls away and the designer's welfare becomes the dominant priority, acceptable choice architecture just completely degrades. It moves from transparent guidance, slips down into manipulative design, and finally bottoms out into a full-blown dark pattern, which is usually characterized by hidden costs and deliberate obstruction.
So, how do we spot this? That brings us to Section 4, the evaluative toolkit. Think of these 4 criteria as your personal ethical decoder ring. Number 1, beneficiary alignment. The nudge must serve the target's interests, not the designer's. Number 2, welfare grounding. It has to rest on a defensible standard with strong evidence of a gap between what people prefer and what they actually choose. Number 3, program transparency, or meta-transparency. Even if you don't realize you're being nudged in the moment, the overarching program has to be publicly disclosed. It has to survive public scrutiny. And number 4, which is a big one, reversibility. Exiting the choice must not carry excessive friction or cost. You got to be able to easily back out.
All right, Section 5, real-world application. Let's see how this plays out in the wild.
Let's put all this theory into action. On the left side here, we have a classic welfare nudge, automatic pension enrollment. It uses our natural inertia to ensure we save for retirement. It's totally beneficiary aligned, and usually it has a very easy opt-out process if you really don't want it. Now on the right, we have a dark pattern, the dreaded subscription roach motel. It uses the exact same cognitive mechanism, status quo bias and inertia, but it's entirely designer aligned. It intentionally introduces crazy amounts of friction to stop you from canceling. Same mechanism, entirely different ethics.
And look, this isn't just abstract theory. It has massive real-world economic impacts. Check this out. In a 2022 report, the Federal Trade Commission actually investigated these dark patterns. They found that subscribing was a super low-friction, one-click action. But canceling? That was a high-friction process, requiring multiple screens and dodging constant retention offers. The FTC proved that this architectural asymmetry, which, by the way, flagrantly violates our reversibility criterion from earlier, artificially boosts retention. It literally transfers money from unwilling consumers directly into the pockets of the designers by weaponizing behavioral economics against them. No way around it. That is manipulation.
So we've traveled from abstract philosophical objections about individual autonomy all the way to the very real impact on your wallet. As you go about your day, the next time you find yourself clicking a pre-checked box or navigating a frustrating cancellation menu, I really want you to look closely at the choices laid out in front of you. Ask yourself, who truly benefits from this path of least resistance? Is the digital environment you are navigating right now nudging you for your benefit or for the designers? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the architecture around you.